Tonight, White House ultimatum.
As far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off.
President Trump seeks Jordan's support for his proposal for Gaza, while Israeli families plead for his help.
With all my heart, do everything in your power to ensure that this deal is continued.
And anti-Christian discrimination.
I'm announcing that I will be creating a brand new presidential commission on religious liberty.
Diving deeper into the president's executive order protecting religious freedom. Plus, hope deferred.
For some of them, it is the net effect is a death sentence.
How Christian ministries are responding to a temporary pause, admitting refugees to America. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. High-stakes talks at the White House today as a Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal hang in the balance. Good evening from CBN's headquarters in Virginia Beach. I'm Gary Lane. President Trump's meeting with the King of Jordan today couldn't come at a more critical time. Hamas is refusing to free Israeli hostages, a move that could shatter the ceasefire and plunge Gaza into more bloodshed. Israel's already preparing for war, while Trump doubles down on plans to one day own the Gaza Strip. So what happens in the coming days could redefine the Middle East. CBN senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright has been tracking the latest, and he joins us now. Kelly, President Trump seeking to persuade King Abdullah to adopt his plan for providing a place for some of the Palestinian people to live. So what progress is he making on that?
Well, Gary, just as you mentioned, this is a very pivotal meeting, very crucial for the president's plan in terms of what he wants to do to help the Palestinian people find a place that could be a sanctuary for them, an oasis for them, and also to redevelop the Gaza area in such a way that it would be that French Riviera that he's talked about. We're looking at video images right now of the president greeting King Abdullah of Jordan, but I can tell you that something is happening. In terms of accepting the president's plan, because this on Truth Social, King of Jordan Abdullah II says, I truly believe with all the challenges that we have in the Middle East, that I finally see somebody, referring to the president of the United States, I finally see somebody that can take us across the finish line to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to all of us in the region. That is very telling. And of course, the king is also stating to the president that he will take in the sick and the feeble of the Palestinians into Jordan. So some breakthrough for the president of the United States there, Gary.
Kelly, President Trump is also upset with Hamas. They're threatening to end the ceasefire that it has with Israel and stating they'll not return the remaining hostages. So how is President Trump responding to that one?
He's very succinct, very clear, making a statement to Hamas, giving them a deadline of Saturday at 12 noon to have all of the hostages returned. Otherwise, it will be perceived as being in violation of the ceasefire. And at that point, the president states that all hell will break loose. Here's what the president said about that.
I just think it's time to either you release everybody. They're not going to be alive right now. Based on what I saw over the last 2 days, they're not going to be alive for long. Saturday at 12 o'clock, and after that, it's going to be a different ballgame.
Mr. President, when you say all hell is going to break loose, are you speaking about retaliation from
You'll find out, and they'll find out, too. Hamas will find out what I mean.
Mr. President,
they're going to find out what I mean. These are sick people. And they'll find out what I mean Saturday at 12 o'clock.
So, Gary, let me explain that a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. Explain that
for your next question. What the president is stating here, as he spoke in the Oval Office with King Abdullah at his side to reporters there, he stated, "Do you know what a bully is?" And all of us know what a bully is and what a bully does. And the president equated Hamas as being this big bully. Now, in addition to that, he was asked the question, what will you do? And he says, you're going to find out. Well, we're already hearing from Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, after speaking to his security cabinet in Israel, that if the ceasefire fails, they will resort to more punishing attacks on Hamas. So that is very clear from the Israeli standpoint what the Israeli Defense Forces will likely do on Saturday at high noon if the hostages are not returned.
Kelly, the president was really shaken and disturbed when he saw those emaciated hostages released, and the families of the hostages have been watching the president and his actions in dealing with the hostage crisis, Gaza, and the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. So what are they saying now?
Gary, I can tell you from hearing from people on the ground in Israel, some of them are related to the hostages. Some of them are longing for the hostages to return home. And having spoken to hostages' families in Israel myself, they are very supported. They feel very supported by this president. Here's what one of them said in response to the president standing up to actually give an ultimatum to Hamas and actually demand that the hostages be returned home.
Mr. President, thank you for the effort you and your staff are making to bring back the hostages. Today is Alon's 21st birthday. I'm asking you with all my heart, do everything in your power to ensure that this deal is continued. Do everything so that Alon and all the hostages will return home.
Gary, you can see the president standing with Israel and standing with the hostages and stating, bring them home now.
Okay, Kelly, thank you so much for being with us. Ben Cohen joins us now. He's a senior analyst and rapid response director of Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Ben, do you think King Abdullah can convince President Trump to reconsider his Gaza takeover plans? What leverage does King Abdullah have?
I don't think at the present time Trump is going to be convinced of that. I think that what's more significant here is that in the weeks since Trump returned to office, we've been hearing the promise of tectonic change in the Middle East, tearing up the old protocols, disrupting long-established ways of thinking about the region, and making clear that Hamas has no role in the future governance of Gaza. So in that sense, that's going to thrust both Jordan and Egypt into the frame. As we saw, Abdullah is in Washington today. The Egyptian president, al-Sisi, is going to be there next week. And I think that both of them are going to hear the same message from the White House. We're tearing up the existing paradigm for dealing with this part of the world, and we need your help, we need your assistance, we need your cooperation. And I think it'll be a mixture of carrots and sticks. But I don't think that at today's meeting or at any other encounters down the line that Trump is going to be particularly amenable to hearing from King Abdullah or from the Egyptian president al-Sisi, we're not interested in your resettlement plan, we don't want to participate. I think this is now established on the agenda.
Well, just how feasible is Trump's plan to own the Gaza Strip? What do you say to critics who see the permanent removal of Palestinians as essentially ethnic cleansing?
Well, firstly, I don't think anybody is talking about the permanent removal of Palestinians. I think the plan, as it's understood, is that there would be a lengthy but temporary period where Palestinians are living in an adjacent country or somewhere else in the Islamic world, away from bombing, away from the wreckage site that Gaza has become. And there are a number of sites where this could potentially happen, which is why Jordan and Egypt are so important. Jordan, in terms of being able to take in some of the 1.8 million residents of Gaza on a temporary basis, and Egypt, because Egypt has control of the Sinai Peninsula, and there are large parts of that peninsula that could be repurposed as a temporary Palestinian homeland. Okay,
Ben Cohen with Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Another major story tonight, Russia has released U.S. citizen Mark Fogel, an American school teacher who had been detained in Russia since 2021. The White House announcing the news, saying President Trump, Steve Witkoff, and the president's advisors negotiated an exchange that serves as a show of good faith from the Russians and a sign we're moving in the right direction to end the brutal and terrible war in Ukraine. Vogel is expected to be reunited with his family tonight. Well, the European Union is firing back after the U.S. slapped new tariffs on steel and aluminum. The EU says the move will not go unanswered and warns of tough countermeasures. Possible targets? Iconic American goods like motorcycles, jeans, peanut butter, and whiskey. If the U.S. tariffs take effect on March 12th as planned, a trade battle could be brewing. The tariffs are designed to spur domestic steel and aluminum manufacturing. Critics say it will raise prices on construction materials and on cars. Well, coming up, President Trump's new move to fight anti-Christian bias. One evangelical leader breaks it all down right after this. Welcome back. President Trump is taking action to combat what he calls anti-Christian bias in the U.S. During a series of events in Washington last week surrounding the National Prayer Breakfast, he signed an executive order establishing a new task force to eliminate anti-Christian discrimination within the federal government. Well, senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergner joins us now with more on this initiative. Tara, the executive order. Go ahead and tell us about it.
Indeed, the executive order highlights an increase in vandalism targeting conservative churches and pro-life pregnancy centers following the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. At the prayer breakfast last week, Trump criticized the Department of Justice, the IRS, and the FBI by name. He appointed Attorney General Pam Bondi to lead that task force, which will identify unlawful policies and practices across federal agencies and recommend further presidential or legislative action. It will also focus on investigating and prosecuting cases of anti-Christian violence and vandalism.
While I'm in the White House, we will protect Christians in our schools, in our military, in our government, in our workplaces, hospitals, and in our public squares. And we will bring our country back together as one nation under God with liberty and justice for all.
In addition, Trump is reviving the White House Faith Office to be led by Pastor Paula White, who previously advised him on faith initiatives during his first term. A senior advisor tells CBN that Trump has specifically directed the Faith Office to be located in the West Wing. The task force launches following Trump's pardon of pro-life activists charged under the Biden administration and after a 2023 House report revealed an FBI memo targeting traditional Catholics as domestic threats, Gary.
Thank you, Tara. Well, joining us now is Ralph Reed. He's the founder and chairman of Faith and Freedom Coalition. Yes. Ralph, you commended the executive order to create this task force. So why do you think this is something the president needed to do?
Well, I think it needed to be done because sadly and unfortunately, we have a great deal of evidence that under the prior administration and in some elements of the bureaucracy, that Christians and people of faith were being targeted. We know that the Richmond FBI office, in coordination with other offices, the Richmond, Virginia office, in coordination with other entities throughout the FBI, was suggesting that faithful traditionalist Roman Catholics should be surveilled as a potential domestic security threat. We know that the Department of Justice targeted parents whose only crime was to attend school board meetings and object to the teaching of the trans agenda to their children. And boys using girls' bathrooms, they were targeted. I mean, boys using girls' bathrooms, they were targeted for surveillance and potential arrest and prosecution. So we need to make sure that Christians are not being persecuted, that they're not being targeted, and that the bureaucracy is not violating their First Amendment rights.
Ralph, what do you think this, some people who say that this shows favoritism to Christians, so what do you think? Is that any risk to Americans of different faith backgrounds?
No, not at all. I mean, look, I've been a long time opponent of religious bigotry and religious discrimination in all of its ugly forms, including anti-Semitism. I've partnered with organizations like the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith to oppose anti-Semitism. We oppose all forms of religious discrimination. But the specific issue here was that in a number of instances, Christians were being targeted. And they were being targeted for no reason other than their faith. It was based on their theology and their belief system. That's wrong. It's un-American. It should never happen in this country. And that's why I applaud the president for creating this task force. And I must say, as somebody who has known her and worked with her for decades, I can't think of anybody better to lead that task force than Attorney General Pam Bondi.
And what kind of action do you think we should expect to come from this task force? It sounds like President Trump has given it a high level of prominence with multiple cabinet secretaries involved.
Yeah, I don't want to prejudge it, but I think at a minimum, look, leadership begins at the top. And the fact that President Trump has made it abundantly clear that in his administration, the targeting and persecution and prosecution of Christians is not going to be tolerated. That's going to flow all the way down to the lowest rungs of the bureaucracy. And I think the days of Christians being discriminated against ended on January 20th when he put his hand on the Bible.
Okay, Ralph Reed with the Faith and Freedom Coalition, thank you for joining us.
You bet.
Up next, millions of refugees in limbo after the U.S. hits pause on resettlements. How Christians are responding. Next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. A new challenge to ICE agents making immigration arrests in churches and houses of worship. Dozens of Christian and Jewish groups filed a lawsuit saying the Trump administration policy harms their religious freedom. The suit includes Reformed Jews, Baptist Pentecostals, and the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, USA, and others, representing several million people and thousands of congregations. The lawsuit mirrors a previous Quaker challenge, arguing that the policy has lowered church attendance and the ability to minister to both legal and illegal migrants. While more than 2 million refugees worldwide lived in dangerous conditions and need a place to go. While the United States has a history of providing help, resettlements have been temporarily stopped, a program that most evangelicals strongly support. It's a move that worries organizations that assist those trying to escape war, natural disasters, or religious persecution. Charlene Aaron has the story.
This country's first refugee legislation came in 1948, helping almost 500,000 Europeans flee communist regimes. Since 1975, the U.S. has admitted almost 4 million refugees. Now, Homeland Security has 90 days to determine whether the program should restart, something resettlement advocates say creates challenges, especially for persecuted Christians. In his first day in office, President Trump suspended refugee admissions with an executive order that stated the country lacks the ability to absorb large numbers of migrants, and in particular refugees. Matt Sorens, a vice president with World Relief, says this action had a negative impact on families awaiting resettlement.
Because our staff have had to call family members who are already here in the United States who've been resettled in recent months or years or decades, and who had loved ones who perhaps had been waiting in a refugee camp 10, 15, 20 years, who finally had been approved for resettlement, and we had a travel date, and we've had to call and let the stateside folks know that, at least for the immediate future, that travel has been canceled. And it's a devastating conversation to have.
While the executive order calls for a 90-day review, agencies like World Relief that rely on government funds worry about budget cuts following the president's new deportation order and immigration policies.
We still believe we have an obligation to those whom we have already invited to fly to the United States. Our government arranged those flights. We made a commitment to them that we provide some very basic support. They've got basic food and other basic necessities so that we can help them then to find a job, to be economically self-sufficient.
Open Doors USA serves persecuted Christians around the globe. And CEO Ryan Brown applauds America's long-standing policies of welcoming refugees.
Things is the U.S. has historically just been that beacon, if you will, that symbol of hope, that of a place where the weary and huddled masses are able to receive that sanctuary.
According to his organization, current reports indicate around 380 million Christians worldwide are persecuted because of their faith. That would include places like Sudan, Iran, Iraq, and Myanmar, where following Jesus can lead to imprisonment, violence, or worse. Brown says if the U.S. dramatically reduces or ends its resettlement program, those fleeing religious persecution are likely to be affected.
The majority of the Christians that we work with, they recognize that they have an opportunity in the midst of their persecution. For those that are denied opportunity, it is, for some of them, it is the net effect is a death sentence, because they have literally no other opportunities, with the persecution that they are facing. For the U.S. to close its borders from those that needing and seeking that sanctuary because of their faith in Christ, it's a discouraging message.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Coming up, a golden opportunity to celebrate man's best friend. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, an annual event celebrating man's best friend. It was a sea of gold this weekend in downtown Golden, Colorado. An event called Goldens in Golden took over the city for a day, bringing in thousands of visitors and their golden retrievers for food, photo ops, and lots of treats. Since National Golden Retriever Day happens in February, the city started the event in 2019 to bring in visitors during an otherwise slow season.
It's a convergence of National Golden Retrieval Day and the City of Golden. We're so happy to host people. It's a wonderful town.
People from all over the country come to Golden to walk the golden streets with their furry friends. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation for tonight. See you tomorrow. Have a great evening.